So we all know that Star Wars Outlaws is coming out this year, and although a lot of people, myself included, are very hyped for it, a lot of people are also concerned or mostly just not overly excited, seeing as it is a Ubisoft game, and a lot of people do tend to carry a lot of skepticism and almost a certain level of distaste towards Ubisoft. Now with that being said, today I wanted to go over why I am actually even more confident as of the last month or two that Outlaws is actually going to be a really solid game, and as weird as it might seem, it all boils down to a game that came out last year, which is Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Now, Avatar came out on December 7th, and the reason that I bring it up is that it is actually made by the same studio that is making Star Wars Outlaws, that being Massive Entertainment. Now, granted, they are different teams, so it's not like it is the exact same people working on it, but it is still the same company, and there is no doubt going to be some changeover between some of the people who have worked on Avatar and some of the people who are working on Outlaws as well, even if they are just there for their input rather than actually developing the game. Now, although they are different teams, it is pretty rare that one team inside of a company is drastically better or worse than the others, at least when it comes to a team that is in the same location. Both of these teams, as far as I know, are set in Malmö, Sweden, and so we have seen it in the past where there are two teams, but they're actually sort of offshore teams, so one team will be in one country, the other team will be in a different country, and in those cases, for sure, there are definitely a few cases where one studio is really, really good and the other studio not so much, but I do think it is pretty rare for that to happen within the actual same studio in terms of being in the same city. A few examples of what I just said is that I'm sure you guys will know of DICE. They made Battlefront 2, they make the Battlefield franchise. The team that I guess makes the main game itself, they are based also in Sweden, yet they're in Stockholm. But then there is also a team in LA that was formerly known as DICE LA. Now they are technically called Ripple Effect now, so they've kind of branched out into their own company. But back in the Battlefield 3 and 4 days, for example, DICE LA was actually a different studio that was obviously set in LA and the other one was set in Stockholm. And there was a pretty big difference between those two teams in that DICE Stockholm, although the game generally turned out to be good, they would always launch very, very poorly. But then DICE LA would kind of come in and clean up because they were part of the live service team and they would often, I guess, fix the game after launch. And that was one example of one DICE studio being kind of drastically better than the other DICE studio. We've also seen examples of this with Arcane, that being the Austin team and the team in Lyon in France. I'm sure you guys heard of Redfall, which was the Xbox exclusive that came out last year and was absolutely terrible. That was made by the Austin team of Arcane, yet the Lyon team, they actually made both Deathloop and Dishonored, which are both like critically acclaimed games, even though all of those games came out from the same studio being Arcane. So those are just some examples that it can still happen. One team can be drastically better or worse than the other team, but generally speaking, like I said, when they are actually based in the same studio, that being in the same city and everything, it is pretty damn rare that that can happen. Generally speaking, multiple teams split across multiple games. For example, Insomniac, they worked on both the core Spider-Man game as well as Miles Morales. It was different teams working on those games, but they were both like essentially critically acclaimed. So I don't think we have too much to worry about there, and it is exciting seeing what Massive Entertainment have just done with Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Now, before we go any further, guys, I wanted to give you a quick but exciting announcement. I've actually overhauled my Patreon, and there is now a free tier on the Patreon. Yes, free Patreon, while still giving you some of the awesome bonuses that we do have over there on the Patreon. Signing up for free will give you access to my private Discord channel. You'll also get the power to vote on the content that you get to see here on the channel, having an actual say in all of the content that goes up, not only on this channel, but my other channels as well. And most excitingly, I'm going to be doing a heap of giveaways throughout this year, giving away stuff like the new merch, for example. There's going to be new merch drops every 2 months or so, giving away some games throughout the year, and all of those giveaways are going to be done through the Patreon. All you need to do is click this button that says join for free. There's no catch to it at all. You're not going to get spammed with emails or anything like that. It is literally just a free tier to the Patreon for those who aren't interested in paying. And by doing so, you're going to be more involved in the community and also get some chances to win giveaways, vote on the content you want to see, and even get access to the private Discord channel, like I said. So be sure to head to the Patreon link down in the description, click that button that says join for free. But with that being said, let's get stuck back into the video. Now, leading into Avatar, I couldn't really tell if the game was going to be amazing or if it was going to be terrible. Like I said, Ubisoft games do often come with a bit of a stigma, even though I don't necessarily buy into that myself. I don't generally just blanket a company and say, oh, they always make terrible games. That's not really how I go. But there is always a bit of skepticism there, just because if everyone's kind of shitting on the game before it comes out, then I generally pay attention to that, whether I believe it or not. And I did also have my own thoughts that it might be a little bit too similar to Far Cry, which, don't get me wrong, I actually really love the Far Cry franchise, but I just thought it would be a bit too similar and almost a little bit too basic. Well, turns out I was completely wrong, and that it was actually a genuinely very, very good game. One of the most immersive games that I think I've played in years, if not ever, to be honest. It also had some of the best graphics of all time, and that is not just only my opinion, but if you guys have heard of Digital Foundry, they are a team who essentially do the science behind graphic fidelity and frame rate and all that kind of thing. They pretty much test all the big games that come out, and they don't just give their opinion on whether something looks good. They actually have the, I guess, statistical breakdowns and almost the science behind it to pretty much prove what they're saying. And they also said that Avatar was one of the best looking games of the year and potentially one of the best looking games of all time. So like I said, it's not just my opinion that it looks good, it is essentially an objective statement. And if you guys played the game, I'm sure you would say exactly the same. Avatar uses the Snowdrop engine, which Star Wars Outlaws will be using as well. So that is also a good sign that they are going to be built within the same engine. That doesn't mean they're going to look exactly the same and play exactly the same, but generally games built in the same engine, they are at least somewhat similar in terms of the graphic fidelity and I guess in a lot of cases also the gameplay. Now, speaking of the gameplay, something else about Avatar that actually kind of blew me away compared to what I expected. The combat was really solid. Now, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It wasn't the best combat I've ever played or anything, but it was a lot better than I thought it would be. And that is obviously very important, especially for a game like Avatar, or in this case, Star Wars Outlaws. The combat is very important. If not, it's arguably the most important thing. And that definitely bodes very well for the game, considering Avatar had very, very solid gameplay. And obviously, like I said, it is built within the same engine. Now, the most mind-blowing of all to me, though, was actually the map. If you guys have seen the Avatar movies, which I'm going to assume pretty much all of you have, that planet, Pandora, looks absolutely insane. It is so colorful, it's so vibrant, and they portrayed that perfectly within Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. The map looked absolutely stunning. It is probably the best looking map that I've ever played across any of the big games that I've played, even, you know, multiplayer games and everything. It's probably the best looking map of all time. It's also one of the biggest maps that I can actually remember playing. Now, there are definitely bigger maps out there, but it is pretty damn massive. There was one point that I was actually doing a mission on one side of the map, and then the next mission sent me all the way to the other side of the map. Keep in mind, you can fast travel, so it's not like I had to walk all this distance, but the marker that I set, it actually said it was 16 kilometers away. So that is just an example of how big the map is. It wasn't even like that was corner to corner or anything. That was just like, you know, a rough example of one side of the map to the other. And like I said, that is something that really blew me away. Not to say that I thought it was going to be a bad map or anything, but it was so much better than I expected. And that is just another point that really does bode very well for Outlaws, since obviously the planets are going to be incredibly important in this game. The locations and the settings within any Star Wars media, it's always going to be very important. And if it's anything similar to Avatar, we are set for a very, very solid setting for Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I'd imagine the maps or the planets in Outlaws are probably not going to be nearly as big, but we also know there are 5 or 6 confirmed planets. So I'd imagine the total surface area of all of those planets combined are probably going to be the same, if not actually more than what we got in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. And if that is the case, we have got so much stuff to explore. There's going to be so many little nooks and crannies to check out, so many areas that they can put side content and all that kind of thing. And once again, that bodes very, very well for Star Wars Outlaws. The fact that this team nailed the atmosphere and just the overall immersiveness, as well as the graphics, the map design, and it also had very solid combat as well. These are all very, very good signs for Star Wars Outlaws. Realistically, the only other big elements for me are to have a really solid story, as well as having good side content. And if we have all of those things combined with a good story and good side content, then I think this game is set to be an absolute banger. Now, that's by no means a given. It's not like just because Avatar has it, that means that Outlaws is going to have it too. We don't know how good this game's going to be until it actually launches, but all of the signs from Avatar are actually pointing towards massive entertainment really knowing what they're doing, and that has got me very, very excited. Overall, Avatar was a great sign for Star Wars Outlaws, even though it is obviously a different game, and I essentially just wanted to fill you guys in on that for those who didn't play the game. I've actually got another video comparing Avatar with Outlaws that's going to be going over the whole map and kind of just going in depth on why it was so good and how that could be really massive massive for Outlaws as well. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel. That will be the next video that goes live. With that being said though, let me know if you are excited for Outlaws and whether or not you think it's going to be good. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts down in the comment section. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day and may the force be with you always.